It's 1979. I'm 55 years old. This is what my son believes in. These people, with this hair and these clothes, making these gestures, making these sounds. They don't know this is the end of punk. They don't know that Reagan's coming. It's impossible to imagine that kids will stop dreaming about nuclear war and have nightmares about the weather. It's impossible to imagine HIV, what will happen with skateboard tricks, the internet.
And that's a clip from 20th Century Women. I'm delighted to say that its star, Annette Bening, is here in the studio. Hello, Annette. How are you?
Hi, great. Thank you.
Well, it's very nice to have you on the programme and very nice to have you in the UK. And this isn't going to be a difficult interview, and this isn't a difficult question, but what a fantastic film. I was smiling like an idiot when I came out.
Thank you. What was it about it that you liked?
Well, okay, so that's very neat. Now you've turned it back, so
That's
now
right,
you're
it's your
interviewing
job.
me.
Go.
Well, okay, I'll tell you. So, well, it's basically your relationship with your son, which is great. So, and I just told you the story, but before I went in, my youngest son was saying, "Can we come back and do some stuff?" And I got some friends and all this. And I was going, well, it's a little bit tricky and there's things and it's a bit complicated. I came out of your movie. I sent him a text saying, it's fine, whatever.
Yes.
Bring them all back. It's fine. We can go out for pizzas,
Yes.
because there is a warmth and generosity to the heart of this film, which is very rare. And it's wise and it's funny. I realise you haven't said anything in this interview other than ask me questions. So stop that. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. So, Annette Bening, I'm taking back control of this interview. Tell us about Dorothea and your role at the heart of this film.
Well, as you're speaking, it makes me think of Mike Mills, who wrote and directed it, and that's very much a description of him. He is a very warm-hearted and beautiful man, but he's really incisive and looks very carefully at things. He has a generous eye, but he doesn't suffer fools. He began this by really wanting to investigate his own mother, but he knew that this character, Dorothea, that I played would eventually not just be his mother, but that was his point of departure. And that whole kind of idea that we want to invest those that we are closest to, that we love the most, whether it's our children or our parents. We also have a longing to really know and understand, and that there's always somewhat of a gulf between us, which is kind of a mystery. Why is that? And he wanted to really investigate his mom. So we talked at length about his mother. We're still talking about his mother in a good way. And that became the way we started. He wanted me to watch Humphrey Bogart. He said not only did she love Humphrey Bogart and that character and that man that he was in those movies, but she wanted to be Humphrey Bogart.
Really?
Yes. There was those are people that probably know Mike. He made his films. He made a film called Beginners, which was all about his dad. And his dad's story is incredible.
And he came out as
an older man. After he'd been married his whole life, his wife died, he came out. So that was that film. So this is Mike's then sort of next step, which is to go deeply inside of his mom. So she... and she knew that in this story, she's not married. The man is just gone because they've divorced. But in real life, his mom did have a long, long marriage to a gay man. But they were very much in love. They had children together. And so Mike had a lot of material. He was inspired by his sisters, his two older sisters. Greta Gerwig plays Abby, who's this wild punk, but she also has an illness, and so she's also very interesting. And that was sort of the point of departure for her, was his sister. And then Julie, played by Elle Fanning, he says is the girl that it's a kind of amalgamation of a number of girls that he fell in love with that didn't fall in love with him.
As you would if Elle Fanning was next door.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So in your house, in Dorothea's house, there's sort of like basically a community.
Yes.
Essentially. So there's Billy Crudup, who's the kind of hippie handyman who's
good
there. Good soul, who we've just seen in Jackie playing the journalist, extraordinary and very busy. And you've got these two girls, and you've got your son, and between you, you're sort of raising him.
Yes, exactly. And Billy, that character, William, see, I grew up in San Diego, so I grew up in this world at this time. That's why the film jumped out at me. It wasn't even so much the part of Dorothea, but just the whole world that it was in. And I felt like I certainly knew William. I had dated William. I had dated a couple of Williams. Surfers, yeah, guys on motorcycles, guys that were not very driven, but basically really good people. So yeah, so Dorothea is in this big rambling house, which is still under construction, which is, I guess, some sort of metaphor for life, trying to get it right, trying to fix it, change it, and the walls are falling down. And she's got Billy helping her, and then she's got these two extraordinary young women, and decides what better way to usher her dear son into the world, but to have them help her.
And at the heart, as you mentioned, at the heart of this film is the relation. It's a relationships film, whether it be a parent looking at their child or a child looking at their parents, and you will come out of this film looking at your relationship with your parents or your relationship with your children, if you have them. And there must have been moments where you, as I said to you, I thought I sent my son a text saying, "Yeah, it's fine." It feels like such a personal film, not just for Mike Mills but for you. Although you're playing a role, there must have been times where you thought, "I wonder what my kids are going to make. What my kids are going to make of this."
Always. I always think that, though, of whatever I do. In fact, they're very generous to me, I must say, as young adults in my work, but they matter. Their opinions matter to me more than anyone.
What do they
because,
say?
of course, they see you for what you are. All your children always do. It's not what you say to them that they get. It's who you are that they get. The other thing that I found myself thinking about a lot was my parents. My mother's 87, my dad's 90. Every time I talk about the film, I always think, my parents still live in San Diego, in the same house that I grew up in from when I was 10, if you can believe that. I want to go back and sit down with them and say, now, tell me everything that you haven't told me, please. What is it about you that I don't know that I really should know? Maybe I could get something out of them there, and I've been thinking about doing that. I know a lot of people do that with their parents. They sit and do a history. But this film particularly makes me curious. And also I find myself, and I have said to my kids, they're just old enough now, maybe not the 16-year-old, but the others. I've said to them, look, I want to sit down and I want to tell you everything I haven't told you yet. Because, you do keep things from your children, not because you want to keep secrets, because you want to protect them. You also want to have them to think of you in a certain way, and maybe you don't want to reveal everything about yourself.
And they keep things from you also for our benefit, for the parents' benefit.
Well, of course, because we all know we've done that with our parents.
Can I ask you about the title is 20th Century Women. How relevant is the fact that this is 1979, not just for giving us a wonderful soundtrack and Devo T-shirts and stuff like this, but would it be the same movie if it was 2017?
No, because it's pre-digital. And I think that just now maybe we're beginning to be able to reflect on what the modern digital age is bringing us. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that the rate of change in our lives now is so much faster than it was before. And in fact, when we were working on this movie, there's a book called Future Shock, Alvin Toffler, and it was a very popular book about the rate of change in everyone's lives. And how in the last 200 years, even in the last 100 years, the rate of change for human beings and what we're trying to absorb has sped up so much that it put people, his thesis was it puts people in a state of future shock, that you're sort of unable to absorb everything that's coming in. Well, now it's exponential since then. But this time the 70s begins to look a little bit innocent compared to where we are now because of what we could take in any given moment. There's a Jimmy Carter speech in the movie.
I was going to ask you about the Jimmy Carter speech. So I hadn't heard this speech before, but it's obviously quite important. Can you just explain what the speech was and why it's in the film?
It's a very seminal speech, and it's known as the Malaise speech in America, although it was not really. He was basically saying one of the things that he was saying in the speech, and the part that's in the film, is about materialism. And we have become this materialistic culture. And what we're learning is that in the end, there's no real meaning there. That we want to acquire things because in some way it satisfies something in us. But basically he's saying, in the end, there's nothing deep in that, and we need to think about other things besides materialism. And there, Jimmy Carter was on the dais when Trump was inaugurated. I couldn't help but think about that when I saw him up there. He's survived an incredibly virulent cancer, and in fact gave a press conference not long ago where he was basically open and saying, look, I am terminal, and gave an extraordinary, what I thought was an extraordinary press conference. So Jimmy Carter represents a time that now in America seems so long ago, and
you
the
can't
values.
imagine, it's not a speech you can imagine President Trump giving. I think that's fair to say.
I think it's fair to say, yes.
And is it so? It's included actually because from what you said, I mean, Dorothea at the end of the speech, you're all sitting around, and Dorothea says, "Well, I think he's right," but everyone else was saying, graphically, well, that's him not going to win the next election. You know, that's him completely messed up, because if you stand there and saying that kind of stuff, you're not going to get elected again.
And in fact, after they had, I did a fair amount of research on this because I happen to know one of the guys who was involved in writing the speech. The day after the speech was given, they had a lot of positive mail into the White House. But then right after that, they had a big crash in his administration. A lot of the cabinet left, and it was the beginning of his downfall.
You're a theatre actor, I certainly have been. This feels like an ensemble piece. I just wonder if there was an element of theatre that you quite liked.
Well, certainly the preparation was, and Mike is not a theater guy. He's a graphic artist, the man who made the film. But no, we started out dancing. We would have a dance party every morning. We did improvisation. We did exercises where we would improvise scenes that aren't in the film that would have happened, but just to feel what that was like.
That must have been different, I would think.
Well, it's very much like theater school. Lots of rolling around on the floor and getting to know each other.
Pretending to be a guinea pig.
Exactly. We didn't do the guinea pig, but close. We might have done animals. I'm not sure. But, oh, God, I certainly did that one. But
What animal were you particularly
I was
good
a
at?
hippo. No, we had a teacher in my acting school who was American, but she'd gone to school here in England, and she was one of those Americans who had an English accent, which was a bit troubling. And
It's called an affectation, I think.
You're saying that, not me. Anyway, yes, I did a hippo, and I was not very successful. Although we had to learn how they ate, how they slept, and what sounds they made.
How long did you have to be a hippo for? Because I know.
Well, you had to get up in front of the class and for a few minutes, and I completely broke character and laughed. But I did work on my hippo. I went to the zoo and observed the hippo.
I'm not expecting to see that in any movie in the near future. However, I was just going to ask you about Rules Don't Apply, which we're going to get to see here shortly, I think. And you're directed by your husband, Warren Beatty, I think for the first time.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that? Because I'm assuming you won't be back for that.
Thank you for asking. Rules Don't Apply is the first film my husband's made in about 20 years. And he'd always been interested in Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was always a character that he thought would be a great kind of way of telling a story. So he had been literally thinking about making a movie with Howard Hughes in it since the 70s. So this is his Howard Hughes movie. He plays Howard Hughes, but there's a romance between two young people that is basically the center of the story. And I play the girl's mother, and I was directed by my husband, and it was a great joy.
Were you an easy direct?
I was. Very easy.
You did what he said?
I did what he said, and I remember years before I had ever met him, I met Glenn Headley, who is an actress, a great actress, and she was in Dick Tracy, and she said that Warren was her favorite director. And once I started working with him, I understood why. He has great enthusiasm, and he just has more energy than anybody on the set. And is and most directors, what makes them great is they love actors and they love watching people perform, and he very much has that.
Maybe he'll get the bit between his teeth again and do some more.
I hope so. But the movie's very beautiful, and I'm very partial to it.
I also see a title which jumped out of a movie. Apparently, sometimes this is completely wrong, but apparently you're working on a film called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool.
That is true.
Now there's a title.
There's a title. It's a movie that we made last year in London and in Liverpool.
Oh, good.
It's based on a book called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool by Peter Turner, and it's a real-life story. Peter wrote a very tasteful and slender volume about a relationship he had with an American film actress named Gloria Graham, and I play Gloria Graham. Gloria, at the end of her career, was doing theater in places like Sheffield and Watford, and she fell in love with this young actor from Liverpool, and they had a very intense relationship, and Peter wrote a book about it, so we made a film of it.
So lots of Annette Bening coming to our screens very shortly, is what you're saying. If they come anywhere close to 20th century women, they will be treasures to look after. I love the movie. Annette, thank you very much indeed for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.